So this video is going to be a little bit controversial because it's going to go against a lot of the information that is shared about how to start and scale Facebook ad campaigns, because as is life, the people with the loudest voices are usually the most uneducated. So I'm going to go against the grain a little bit and kind of show you what I do to start and grow and scale our clients' Facebook ad campaigns. And just to show you that I'm not like making this shit up. Here's some results for one of our clients we've got on the screen right now. So again, I've not just tried this strategy like one time and it's just magically worked. Like we've done this over a prolonged period. I've been running ads since 2016, but specifically for this client, we've done 4 launches in like the last year and a little bit. And you can see that, we started spending $32,000 on ads. We got them a 4 cash ROAS and a 9.8 ROAS. The highlight was in Feb early this year. We spent 82 grand. We made them back 400K cash, over 800K in sales revenue, because obviously they sell coaching. So there's some payment plans in there. A 5x cash ROAS and a 10x revenue ROAS. It's pretty insane. And then just recently we finished another launch for them. The conversions were a little bit lower, but we just scaled a lot harder this time. So we spent 181,000. We spent that in a 4-week period. And we generated about 400K cash, 900K in total sales revenue, and over 200K profit cash and over 700K profit in sales revenue. So a 2.2 ROAS on cash, 4.97 ROAS. So this stuff just works. Just to give you a bit more idea, you can see in May to June, again, we actually stopped running ads towards the start of June, but you can see here we spent the 181,000 inside the ad account, which I tracked here. So again, I'm not just making these numbers up. If you go into the Thrive Card account, you can see that the sales we generated this client over $789,000 in pretty much like a 2-week period. All the money goes into one account. So obviously that 800 grand, it's not all from the ads. You can see that about half of that, just like 400K of that, was from the ads cash collected. And again, we've got another 500K in payment plans to come in. So again, this stuff works. So what I want to do is kind of like break down the exact strategy that I would start using if I was, building a new Facebook ad campaign from scratch. Now, here's the thing that most people do. Well, most people say, because most people don't actually do the shit that they say. They just say it because they think they know what they're talking about, right? The big thing with like Facebook is you'll see a lot of people being like, oh, like targeting doesn't work anymore. Like let the algorithm do its thing. Like all you need to do is target like broad, right? Just do a big campaign, put like $1,000 as a campaign budget and just let it rip to like a broad audience. And as long as your creative is good, then it doesn't really matter. Now, to an extent, I agree, but for the majority of people, it's not true. And here's why. Because the only way that going broad works is if you've got an ad account with a shit ton of data. If you have a brand new ad account and it's got no data on it, your pixel has never even seen a conversion, then going broad in the beginning is a terrible idea and you're going to lose money. So if you are a newer media buyer or you take on a client and they've not advertised before and they don't have like a seasoned pixel, then stop fucking going broad and just expecting the creative to do the work. Yes, Facebook's algorithm is powerful, but it's not powerful enough to just pick out dream customers when it doesn't have any data to work with. So what we found is like, yes, once you've spent like a significant amount of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars on your ads and your pixels have had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of like visitors and conversions, then yeah, you can afford to go broad. And we are doing this in some of our accounts and it's working. But, for the longest time, people came to me and they were like, oh, Sam, why don't you just go broad with your targeting? And I would try it in some of the clients' accounts that we'd take on. And because they were newer clients, they didn't have like a seasoned pixel and it wouldn't work. So if you are starting an ad account from scratch, or you're working with a new client who's starting a new ad account, then don't be surprised if your broad ad campaigns don't work. Again, once you've got more data and it's more seasoned, like for this client, for example, we didn't just do everything to broad, but we probably spent 10,000, like tens of thousands on broad campaigns out of that 181,000. I don't know the exact number. And it worked, but it only worked because we've spent, hundreds of thousands for that client inside their account. And they also have like large organic audiences. So the pixels are getting fired every second, right? With data. So it's got a lot of data. So don't go broad in the beginning. If you are starting an ad account from scratch, then you need to have a strategy and like a testing infrastructure in place in order for you to succeed. So this is what I do. I'm going to cross this out because it annoys me when people are like, oh, just go broad. And these are the type of people that have literally spent $10 on ads. So first off, phase one, we're always going to have a testing campaign, right? And we have multiple testing campaigns personally. Again, this is brand new ad account, never had any data. This is what I would do step by step. I actually have multiple testing campaigns. So I'm going to have campaign number 1. I'm going to have campaign number 2. And there's going to be campaign number 3. And there's going to be campaign number 4. So I'm going to have 4 testing campaigns to begin with. Now, this testing campaign number 1 is going to be targeting target interests. So again, I know people are like, oh, you don't use interest targeting. You should if you have no data, because it's going to at least point Facebook in the right direction of who you want to target. So you're going to have an interest campaign. And inside of that interest campaign, you're going to have lots of different ad sets, right? So you're going to have ad set 1, ad set 2, ad set 3, ad set 4, ad set 5, ad set 6. And again, this will be dependent on your budget, how many ad sets you have. Obviously, if you've got a big budget to work with, then you can have multiple. If I was starting out from scratch, I would have at least 5 different target interests that I'm targeting. And then within then, those ad sets, I would have 2 to 4 ads. So this would be like ad 1, ad 2, ad 3. I know this doesn't look very good, but and all of these ads would be in each ad set. So the only thing I'm testing really between each of the ad sets is the interest, right? So to give you some like basic examples, if I was like selling like life coaching or something, I would have like Tony Robbins as one interest. I would have, I can't even think of any other people, but you get it. Like I just take different interests and I would have them in each ad set. You just have one interest per ad set. And inside each ad set, I would have the same 3 ads. Now, these same 3 ads, they're different, but these 3 ads would be in each ad set. So ad number 1 might be like copy 1, image 1. Ad number 2 could be copy 2, image 1. Ad number 3 could be ad copy 3, image 1. So there, what we're doing, we're testing at the interest level, but we're also doing some testing at the ad level as well. In this example, we're using 3 different pieces of copy, but we're using the same image, right? So at least then you can see, okay, which copy is going to work best. You could do it the other way. You could have 1 piece of copy and you could test different images. It just depends what you feel like is going to be the biggest needle mover. If you're doing like e-commerce and you're selling physical products, then probably the image or the creative is going to be the biggest needle mover. If you're selling like info and coaching, then the actual copy is still pretty good to test. So again, it's going to be dependent on, what you're actually selling. But one thing to note here is, for me personally, I don't mix videos and images in the same ad set. So I would not have like an image here, a video here, and then another image here. What I've just personally found is when you do that, Facebook just prioritizes one type of creative and it'll just put all the budget towards the video, or it'll put all the budget towards the images. And I feel like it doesn't test properly both different types of creatives. Whereas if I just have free ads with images, it'll typically be a bit more even with how it spends the money. And the same if I had an ad set with free videos inside of it, it would more accurately. It's always going to choose one probably to spend the most money on, but I just feel like it's it does it a bit more fairly, and it does distribute the budget more evenly. It's never going to be perfectly even, but it's going to be more even. So that's why I have so many testing campaigns. So basically, I would basically like duplicate the whole thing. Just going to get rid of these for ease. So I would have a second testing campaign that targets the same interests. So whatever interests you're using here, I would use the same interests here. And again, if there's 5 ad sets. If there's 10 interests, then there's 10 ad sets. But the ad level, that's where I would make the difference. And I would have, if this is me testing images, then this is me testing videos. So the only difference between testing campaign 1 and testing campaign 2 is at the creative level. And typically, there's different ways to approach it, but to keep it simple, what I would typically do is I would have this campaign to test images or static images, and I'd have this campaign to test videos. And that's how I would set it up. Because again, I just find that separating images and videos just allows us to test more effectively. And that's what I would do. Now, number 3 and number 4, they're optional based on your data. So these campaigns are they're exactly the same. Oh, let's go to the thinner one. These are exactly the same, but they're going to be testing lookalike audiences, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then here, video 1, video 2, video 3. So they're exactly the same, but obviously we're not targeting interests, we're targeting lookalike audiences. But at the ad level, they would stay the same. So I'd be testing the same images and the same copy as in campaign testing campaign number 1, and then campaign testing number 3. So this is a lookalike campaign testing images, and then this is a lookalike campaign testing videos. So 2 and 4 would be identical, except we're changing out the interests for the lookalikes, and 1 and 3 would be identical, except, again, you're taking out the interest and the lookalikes. They're optional because, again, I'm making this for someone who is maybe starting from scratch or is looking to work on a new ad account, and you might not have data to use to create lookalike audiences. So if you don't have any customer data, you don't have any lead data, your pixels aren't seasoned whatsoever, it's completely brand new, then you're not going to be able to do this in the beginning. And you're probably just going to have to start with campaign number 1 and campaign number 2. So that's like the testing structure. And again, it's a bit old school in terms of like, this is what a lot of people were doing back in like when I started in 2016. Well, it was even like more granular than this. But you'll see a lot of people being like, no, you don't need to do this anymore. Just have one big testing campaign and just, chuck a load of creatives in there and see which one wins. But that's personally, I don't believe that's how you do it. I've been testing this type of like infrastructure since like 2021. And we've been using it consistently since then. And it's still working. Like when I'm talking about these numbers earlier where we did, nearly $1 million in revenue from ads alone, it was following this structure. Yes, we did have some broad campaigns, but we still had these testing campaigns to begin with. And it worked very, very well. So only showing what's worked for me. So what I'll typically do then is let these run, and it depends how you got your campaign set up. But if for the example that I showed you before, we were generating leads, and then once they went through the event that we were promoting, we would sell them and we would close them on a coaching program. So we were generating leads. So our KPI was like $5 cost per lead. And we hit just over that, $5.32. But again, we spent 180 grand in the space of 4 weeks, and we started from zero. Like the account wasn't spending any money. So it was pretty good to keep the cost per lead that low. So that was our KPI. So for us, we basically set the testing ad set budgets at $10. And then as soon as we started seeing that they were working, we started launching more testing ad sets at $20. Now our KPI was, $5. So we should be getting, at least 4 leads per day. If you're just starting out and you're running a similar campaign, but again, you have no data, then when I started this for this client a couple of years ago, we started testing at $5. You're going to spend a lot less and you have to wait a little bit longer to see results. But if you start your campaigns at a low budget or your ad sets at a low budget, Facebook is going to try and find the cheapest possible conversions. The higher the budget, basically the higher your CPA is going to be generally. So why do we not just keep everything at $5? Well, it's just unrealistic to try and spend $180,000 in the space of 4 weeks if your campaigns are at $5 a day. Like, it's just not realistic. So we knew we needed to spend a lot of money more quickly, which is why a majority of our testing campaigns were at $20. But if I had a much lower budget and I wasn't in a rush to spend the money, then I would start my testing campaigns at $5. Now, these testing campaigns, they're not going to last forever, right? Because what happens is after a certain period of time, if they're not getting enough conversions, then they're going to stop performing. But we're not creating these testing campaigns to live forever. We're just getting initial feedback and initial data to understand what ads are working and what ads aren't. So after the initial testing campaign, there's 2 options, right? You're going to have your testing period, and then you've got 2 options. Did they work? Yes. Did they work? No. So if they didn't work, then you need to try and understand like what didn't work, right? Maybe one ad worked better than the other ad. And if this ad worked, then you need to understand why it worked. If it didn't, if it had a different image, then maybe look at creating more images like this one and testing them again. The same with the video, right? If your video campaign here didn't work, then look at the individual ads and see, did one work slightly better than the other? And have a look at the data. If none of them worked, then, just start from scratch again. But if like one of them kind of worked, but the other 2 didn't, then go ahead and start creating more videos like this and launch the test again to see if, it performs better this time. Because there's no point, you can't scale anything until you've obviously got data back to show that something's working. So it's like a continuous process. And again, as your budget increases and you've got more money to spend, you can launch more interest. So like typically for that client that I talked about earlier, we started with anywhere between like 10 to 20 different ad sets within the campaign. And we were spending like $20 a day on each ad set. Obviously, again, if you don't have the budget for that, that's fine. But you can continuously launch more and more interests and different ad sets in these campaigns to try and find the winning audiences. You don't really need to do like 100 different ones. Like you should be able to do like some decent enough audience. Like again, even though I don't like going broad in the beginning, interests are still important. But a bit of common sense applied, you should be able to find like at least, 5 to 10 good interests that you can start spending money behind. So basically, once you're in a position where some of these ad sets are performing well, then if it's yes, then you can start to scale. So this is what I typically do for my scaling campaigns. So number one is testing. Phase number 2 is obviously scaling. So there's two ways I typically do it. One way is if I'm not in a rush to scale and spend a load of money. And the other way is if I am in more of a rush. So there's two ways I like to do it. Way number one is with CBO, and way number two is with ABO. And these are probably like outdated terms just because Facebook changes it. It's Advantage Plus, maybe some of you will know it as. But basically, this is where the budget is set at the campaign level. This is where the budget is set at the ad set level. So way number one is probably what I've found to be the most reliable way in terms of like the success rate of these scaling campaigns is higher. But again, you don't spend as much money. So it depends how much of a rush you are in to spend money and scale. So basically, I have one CBO campaign. And inside that CBO campaign, I will have anywhere between 2 to 4 ad sets again. And it will basically have like winning ad set 1, winning ad set 2, and winning ad set 3. Now, obviously, you can only really do this once you have 3 ad sets that are working in your testing campaign. So let's just say, for example, in this lookalike campaign here, we had let's just say we had 2 ad sets that are working well. So if we go back down here, let's just say we had 2, just to keep the numbers easy. What I would typically do then is I would select the 2 ad sets within this campaign, and I would duplicate it into a CBO. So we've got winning ad set 1, winning ad set 2. And I would set it at a higher budget. What you decide to set the budget at depends on what your current cost per conversion is. So for example, if you're generating leads, if this campaign is getting $2 leads, and then you had another scenario where you had a campaign getting, $20 leads, what you set your scaling budget to is going to differ depending on what your initial results were, right? So if you're getting $2 leads, your CBO budget should be lower than if you were getting, $20 leads. Obviously, that's assuming that $20 leads for that scenario is still profitable. If it's not profitable at $20 cost per lead, then obviously you wouldn't scale it to begin with. So it depends on your cost per lead, it depends on your price, it depends on depends on your return on it, it depends on all the different metrics of your business. If you want to learn how to set budgets properly, just search on this YouTube channel. There's videos I've posted about the Facebook's algorithm and how to budget effectively. That will go into more detail on like the science behind how to set budgets. But I'm just going to say, for example, in this scenario, I'm going to set this CBO at $100. Right, so this campaign is spending $100 a day. On Facebook, because it's a CBO campaign, Facebook is going to distribute the budget effectively between these 2 ad sets. And obviously, within these 2 ad sets, we have the ads that are obviously performing well, right? Like these ads here, for example. And basically what happens then is we know that both of these ad sets are proven to work and all of these ads inside are proven to work. So we'll just let Facebook distribute the budget evenly between the 2. And typically what you'll find is that Facebook will basically choose one of these ad sets to really scale and put most of the budget behind. So don't be surprised if, you've spent $1,000 in this campaign and, ad set number 1 has had like $800 worth. And that's fine because typically these results will be pretty good. This is the most reliable way I've found to scale because you're basically letting Facebook distribute the budget between 2 variations that are proven to work. So even if for whatever reason in the scaling campaign this one doesn't work, the likeliness that 1 out of 2 will work is higher. So therefore, your chances of succeeding are greater. We don't do any more than 4 winning ad sets within one CBO. It really, again, depends on your budget. If you need to spend more, you need to spend more quickly, then maybe put only 2 winning ad sets in one CBO, because then at least, instead of putting 4 into one and just having one CBO at $100 a day, you could put 2 each into 2 separate CBOs, and you could be spending $200 a day. So again, it depends on your budget and how quick you want to scale. But I don't do any more than 4 because I just felt like the budget just dilutes too much and you don't, get the best possible results. So that's option one, and this has been the safest way for us to scale, and like I said, the most reliable. But option two is a quicker way to scale. So obviously with that launch I was talking about, we had to spend 181 grand in 4 weeks, which meant that we didn't really have time on our side. So we did like ABO, and this is really simple. You basically just have a scaling campaign, and inside of that scaling campaign, you just have loads of different ad sets, and they have the ads in them. And you just set the ABO budget at $100 in this example, and any winning ad sets from your tests. So let's just say this was a winning ad set. Let's just say this was a winning ad set. This was a winning ad set. This was a winning ad set, and this was a winning ad set. You would just duplicate them into your scaling campaign, and then just increase the budget to 100. And we'll just have one big scaling campaign with all of our winning ad sets in, and they'll all have individual ad set budgets, just a lot higher than what we were initially testing as. Now, because you're not grouping them together, if one of these ad sets don't work, then obviously the whole thing won't work. Because, in this scenario, if this doesn't work, then at least this one might, and therefore it could still make you money. Whereas in this scenario, you might spend $100, and for whatever reason, this ad set just doesn't work like it did in the testing phase, and you'll have to turn it off. And this one might not work either. But then this one might work, and then this one might work. Basically, the success rate of this is less predictable, or is lower than this one. And I believe, I don't know the science behind this, but this is my theory of why this one works better. This one, the success rate is lower, so don't be surprised if if you find 10 winning ad sets in your testing phase, don't be surprised if 4 out of 10 of them don't work, and maybe only you have 6 winners. I just found that, it's just a bit more, the success rate just fluctuates a little bit more. So that's my pretty much step-by-step process of how I do it. Just have one testing phase, and then you just have a couple of scaling campaigns. And obviously, the more winners that you find here, the bigger your scaling campaigns are going to be, or the more CBO campaigns that you have. And then you just keep launching more ads into these testing campaigns to keep feeding the machine. Because what you don't want to do is find a couple of winners, and then you scale them, and then you stop testing. Because you're just like, I've got 2 to 3 winning ad sets. I'm just going to scale these. Because eventually those ad sets are going to die, and they're going to stop working. And you don't want to then be like, oops, best go and test again. Because you'll probably waste 1 to 2 weeks testing new things. Whereas if you're constantly testing in the background, you can continually start to scale ad sets. But if any of these die and stop working after a month or maybe a couple of weeks or whatever it is, then you've got other tests or other winning ad sets ready to go and ready to scale. So that's a breakdown of a testing infrastructure. Hope that was useful. I do more of this, more detailed stuff to my email list. I send more regular updates because it's easier to write an email than it is to film videos. It's free to join. And you can find that link somewhere in the description of this video, I'm sure. And that's it. Thanks for watching.